Welcome to Champagne Problems Podcast. I am your host, Robbie Shaw. Join us as we explore mental and emotional well-being, physical optimization, and the journey to discovering your highest self. Champagne Problems is brought to you in proud partnership with Bond Buzz, the alcohol-free social spirit. Laird Hamilton, welcome to Champagne Problems.
All right, here we go.
Thank you for doing this, man. Few years in the making, honestly. As many people, I've followed you pretty much my whole life, but Gabby has been on my show before, and as you know, I was in Malibu for the XPT experience, so I've met you a couple times. But Jen was like, "No, you probably won't get him on your podcast," which is fine.
Well, that wasn't nice.
No, it was perfectly fine. I totally understand. But here we are.
Well, you don't take no for an answer, so that's good.
I don't.
Right.
Jen, I think she finally was like, Jesus Christ, dude. Okay, I'll ask.
Well, beautiful.
So let's do, man, I like doing rapid fire questions. First live music concert and where?
Oh, I mean, I've been to some great ones. I think it was In Excess. And my friend knew Michael Hutchinson, and I don't know if either he came to Kauai and I took him down the Nepali coast on him and his girlfriend at the time, and took them and just blew their mind, drove them with Zodiacs through these sea caves and did all this stuff. And I think that then I went and watched him in concert after. I think so. It was one of those things where I'd gotten to meet him, but yeah, that would be probably the first. I mean, I probably had to have a couple when I was a kid too. It's Hawaii, and you grew up around a lot of music there.
All right, so I didn't want to overreact, but that was mine too.
Amazing.
I was in sixth grade, and I live in North Carolina, and Ziggy Marley and NXS came through when I was in sixth grade, and I went. That's been my answer for years. NXS. You're the first person I've ever met that's their first concert as well, except the people I went with.
There we go.
That is hilarious. What's the highest altitude you've ever climbed?
14 something. Mount Rainier, something like that, whatever that is.
Yeah, 14.
It's like the longest endurance climb in North America, unless you go to McKinley, which takes 2 weeks. But Rainier, you can go do it in more or less a 2 days or something like that.
Yeah, I lived in Seattle and did Rainier. I unfortunately didn't make it. I got up to 13 and started getting wacky.
Easy to do is that. And just, I think different days, different times can make the whole experience. And then what you ate. And I mean, all that stuff plays such a big, I wasn't feeling great up there. That's what made me realize that when you're at altitude, you're just really, it's a slow process of dying, right. You're not digesting. You're not you're not supposed to be there.
No. Interestingly, I'm coming out to LA in 2 weeks, and I'm interviewing of course I can't think of her name, but the young lady who does the jiu-jitsu, who climbed Everest.
Oh yeah, Cecilina.
Yeah. I'm sitting down with her. I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah.
What a beast.
Yeah. Well, she went with the crazy guy. So she got NIMS, I think, took her on a little journey, and one thing I know about mountains is you need to make sure whoever's taking you, is taking care of you, because that's not a place to fool around. It's like going out in the big ocean without somebody that doesn't, or that's not looking out for you, because left to your own, those are the places you don't come back from.
Yep. Yeah. And you hear about it a lot.
Exactly.
What's the lowest depth you've ever been?
Not that deep, actually. Probably 80 feet, something like that, in that range. Free dive.
I was going to say, do you snorkel or free dive or anything like that?
Yeah, free dive down there. I haven't been much below that. I have a friend of mine, Susan Casey, who's an author that just wrote a beautiful book called The Underworld. And she's been there, inviting me to go ride some of those subs that are going way down. She spent a few years riding them and going down into the trenches and stuff. So so
it's an interesting area. I said,
in the
snorkel, I meant
darkness.
scuba.
In the darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I want to know what's down
I
there.
like the problem is I like the surface where the air is.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem. All right. All right. What's your favorite smell?
That's a tricky one. There's a couple incense that I like. There's a couple I mean I like frankincense, but I have some incense that I like the scent of. I mean, hard to beat the ocean, you
Yeah.
know. I think that'd be a real I think I'd have there'd be a battle for the my favorite smell. Might be
Yeah.
Gabby.
Hey, hey, hey. Uh, I'll refrain from jokes. Um, have you ever been to the coast in North Carolina? I assume you have.
Yeah, I think briefly I've driven down the coastline there. I can't remember. I was out there on one of the coasts but just it's been a long time and very briefly.
Yeah, it's so different. Obviously, it's it's so flat, and there's so much marsh, and it's
Mm.
so like that smell you describe is man. It's I mean it is miles inland. You can just get that
That
grimy
sea.
marsh smell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love it too.
Rotten seawater.
You're right, right. If you could know the answer to any question, what would you ask?
What's it all about?
Yep, yep. I had the drummer of Hootie and the Blowfish just happens to live nearby here. And he said, we asked him that question and we kind of dug into that. And he was like, even if I knew the answer, it wouldn't change how I live today. And I liked that a lot.
Yeah,
I
I
like
feel
that.
like I think that's a beautiful thing because that means that you're living to your truth.
Yep.
And so I think that's mine's more out of less about that I would change things, more about curiosity. And it might change a couple of things. If I knew some of the stuff, I might be like, hey, what do I really, you know, what do I really need to bank while I'm down here?
Right. Oh yeah, it would change if it depending on the answer, it'd change a few things.
Yeah.
That's
Or I might be another question, which would be, what am I taking with me?
yeah, yeah. All right, man. Let's go. Let's go. So I hate interviews. I like conversation. So
Beautiful.
I'll probably just kind of start and then just
Yeah.
I mean, I got a few things I like to talk about with you, but more getting your perspective on stuff than just
Okay.
question, answer.
Yeah.
Um, one thing I've always wanted to hear you talk on is pushing limits and really because I came to Malibu and I had my limits pushed to a degree that specifically with like breath holding and underwater stuff that I'd never done before. And not only did I get to a point of, you know, pretty heightened fear and a level of panic, I was able to push through it. And there was this reward that came with that that's fairly indescribable. And I look at the things you've done over the course of your life, and it always or often involves pushing limits and pushing boundaries. And I guess two questions. When in your life did you begin to do that almost habitually, or can you remember when that was something that you were like, man, I like that? And and I may know this answer, but was it less thrill seeking and more kind of bettering yourself and almost training?
Well, I mean, I think it started young. I think that, I mean, there's stories that that I'd go to these big cliffs with the adults when they were jumping off, and I would jump off too. Uh, so I think I have a little bit of, I don't know if that's a completely learned skill. I mean, I think there's a potential that it could be something that you're kind of born with that mechanism, and somebody could go daredevil, thrill seeker, and all that kind of stuff. But when you talk about going through that fear, going through that boundary that has been created by our culture, our imagination, reality of this reality or whatever that is, and you get that reward for going through that,
Mm,
then you start to want that. You
yeah,
want that. You want to continue to feel that that experience, and so that pushes you to yeah, because I always look at the whole concept of, the daredevil thrill seeker. In a way, it's like a disclaimer that you can use to just kind of say, oh, that's what those people do. And so that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to force you personally to look at yourself and being like, hey, where am I pushing myself? Where am I going through those those boundaries or those borders that either I've created or that I think exists? And so when you do that and you kind of push on those things and they move, uh, you know, that's pretty interesting. Like you're like, that's cool. Like how far do they move? When do they? And of course, everything has a consequence, and so you're always riding that line of when does the consequence or the failure of doing that either stop you from doing that or result in some sort of you know catastrophe, whether that's injury or in some cases it's death. Some of
Yeah.
these, you see these guys pushing all this stuff, and then they're burrowing in, because at the end there is that. If you're looking on that edge, like if you're looking at the wingsuit or the free climbing or the what, just anything, any edge where the consequence is severe injury or death, then ultimately that's real. Like you might be pushing through a barrier thinking that's not real, but that it's real enough that if people mess up doing it, they die
Yeah.
or severely injured. And so I think, but that's kind of the line. That's the line that you're riding on. Hey, can I push this barrier? And the nice thing about the water and the breath holding and some of these things is they do the similar thing, right? They do a similar thing as you can go to that edge and have fear, but it's a controlled environment. The
Yeah.
body doesn't really know that. I mean, the subconscious, which is the part that's protecting you from your conscious, because if we were just controlled by that, we probably none of us would have made it. So we have this thing that's trying to protect us, and so but when you can push on that in those areas, it does help in all kind of in all aspects of boundaries and fear and those things.
Yeah. 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 I mean, what stood out is call it an addiction or whatever you would call it, but the need to keep pushing.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's a line somewhere. You can't keep doing, more and more until like you said, there is some level of consequence. And if it's that extreme, then the consequence is generally death. Anyway,
But
yeah,
also I think that pushing mechanism is something that was created in us for the species. Like that's
yeah,
not just isolated to a couple of guys doing some stuff. Those people were very important for the survival of the species, for the
sure.
survival of man. Like that was part of our,
Well,
hey, what's
exploration.
over that hill? What's
Yeah,
that? So that's the only reason. Otherwise, we'd all be, in some jungle where we, where
yeah,
we, where we,
safe and
if
sound.
you're looking at things that way. But it is a mechanism. I don't think it's like that's why I think it's something that people have. There's just a percentage of people that when you look at a population, there's just a few people that are going to have a certain, like there is people that have other skills that were probably important to survival when we were a lot more vulnerable to nature than we are, even though we're the most vulnerable we've ever been to nature right now. But we've dealt with some of the most immediate things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like I think about performance under pressure. Um, and like you said, some of us are born with the ability to do it. I, for one, am able to do it in some places and not others. Like obviously, I mean, for some reason, the edge of a cliff gets me, man. It like
Yeah,
physically it'll pull me over,
yeah.
and that's something in me. I don't know what that is. That's not
Well,
learned.
some of your ancestors probably, were falling off cliffs or something happened. I mean, that's
Sure.
real. Like that's
Yeah.
real. We have epigenetic stuff that's passed down to us, that stuff that's happened to people that why are you, well, somebody back there either got thrown off a cliff, fell off a cliff or something. And I always say we have like 5 or 6 primal fears, right? And falling off high places is one of them for sure. You know,
Yeah.
fire, being burned, that's another one of them. Being eaten,
Eaten.
that's another one.
Yeah.
Drowning, that's another one. So, I mean, we have these primal fears that were the situations that probably took most of us out.
Yeah.
right? Eaten by
Yeah.
a giant animal with huge teeth. Like these are things that were things that took us out. And so we're like,
Yeah.
okay, those are imprinted into us.
In our survival instincts, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's it.
Mandatory. Yeah, need
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Being eaten alive, man. Whew, that one keeps me up at night. Have you
Seriously.
ever seen
That's why I
the
don't eat predators. That's why I don't
no,
like to eat predators. I'm not a big, I mean, tuna, okay, some other animal that eating small fish, but things like apex predators, I'm not a big fan of eating, bears and sharks and alligator. I mean, I'm okay. I just feel
yeah,
like if I eat them at some point, I'll be in a situation, they'll be there and they'll be like, hey, this guy eats us. We should just chomp him right now.
that's right. They know. They know. Oh man, have you ever seen the movie the guy that lived with bears in Alaska? I think it might be even called Alaska.
Bear
Bear
man.
Man. Bear
Yeah.
Man.
I know all about him.
Do
Yeah.
you?
Well, I mean, I know his story. I know he was supposed to be the lead actor on Cheers, and then Woody Harrelson got his part, and then he just lost his mind and moved to Alaska and lived with the bears. And then he brought his girlfriend, who might have had something going on like women get, and she just ate them both.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah, in that movie there's like an audio.
Of them
It
getting chomped.
yeah, it's still
I
with
am
me.
okay with that. I don't need to. I
No.
don't. I'm good. Like I don't need
Not
that. I'll keep that off the file. No, I'm just saying. Like I'll keep that. I don't need that on the file.
no, I
Okay.
don't either. It's there though. I heard it one
Yeah.
time. It's stuck.
Once you hear it, you don't get it off.
No, it's brutal. So brutal. I love the idea of, a little bit of a lesser version of what we were talking about. So obviously there's people who can go super, super extreme, super, super risky, whatever limits they want to push. But then there's the controlled environment. And, call it the ice baths or just any kind of physical, emotional, mental exertion or challenge that has this reward associated with it. And that is something that in my later years, I've really I'm really drawn to. I think early in life was just natural. I played basketball. I was a big competitor. I was just physically, ready to just rock. And then of course it died down a little bit and things start to hurt. But now it's very intentional. And I try to create this almost intentional suffering almost because there's this reward on the other side. I mean, is that I look at XPT and I look at a lot of what we do there, and I know it probably stems from like surf training, really. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the core of it. But there's just so many rewards that are associated with it. I mean, is that kind of how you're living, today as you, no offense, reach higher ages? It's a little bit more intentional and controlled.
Yeah. I mean, listen. The truth is, we live in a place where stress creates positive response. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, when it's controlled, and when you can control, there's a great quote, and somebody said, choose your sacrifice or it will be chosen for you. So, it's like choose your sacrifice, choose. And then, so for me, I'd rather choose to put myself in stressful situations that I choose versus being subjected to whatever situation will come along, because you're going to get them. It's going to
Yeah.
happen. Right. And so, and the reward for that is always beneficial. It's like, I tell people a rose bush doesn't want to be trimmed. It's not like, hey,
Right.
go trim all my leaves off. But when you do that, the result is flowers. Like it's going to throw blossoms, and you're going to have a whole thing. And so there's a lot of that. And once like what you're saying, where you start to do it, then you start to seek it because you've experienced the benefit. So you go, you do the ice, you do the heat, you do the long workout, you do the breath hold work, and then you experience the vitality that brings in you. And then you're like, okay, well, what else is more important than that? Like feeling good. And so, and I'm still fortunate to be, I have, just my ocean, I say my ocean challenge, but I have a continued ocean challenge that that right now is, it's more complicated, but no less challenging, no less than anything I've done. Uh, so that's fortunate for me to have that target out there as well, because that helps me go through the process and stay in a position where I can be able to do that. So,
Can you share what that is?
well, yeah, we've been doing a lot of stuff in foiling. So
Yeah.
hydrofoil riding are the boards with the foils.
Yep.
And that's what like the America's Cup boats have gone to. We have 8 new disciplines within hydrofoil surfing. There's electric ones that people see all the time that lift up and they look like they're like hovercraft. They look like they're flying in the air. And we have wave riding ones, and we get towed in into giant surf. And so tow in foiling is really the kind of the peak of my focus in for that particular discipline, for that part of my life, for that my personal pursuit. And
Yeah.
then we're kind of experiencing, because what the foils allow us to do has changed where we can do it. So now the world has opened up to a whole giant arena of potential. And it's bringing us into kind of harsher environments and more kind of situations that are demanding more infrastructure and just better teamwork and all this stuff. So
Wow. I mean, I feel like you're riding swells more than breaks, right? I mean, it's like you
yeah,
can get out in the ocean and ride
yeah,
swells.
yeah, yeah, but then you can be lost. So
Sure.
so there's
Sure.
that. So we have to deal with that, and then we have to deal with accessibility, being able to get to those environments where the best stuff is. For a long time, I think with so many athletes and so many people that pursue things, we're forced into having to publicize everything we do
Yeah.
to make a living, to be part of the thing. I mean, if you play professional sports, you're on TV, you're on the thing. That's why you make the kind of money you make. If you're playing baseball or you're playing football, or you're a professional soccer player or tennis or whatever, you're on a platform that allows you to the exposure that justifies why they give you all the money. And so, and I've spent a career doing that, and I always felt like it would be nice to not always do that. It would be nice to just do it kind of unseen in a way.
Yeah.
And surfing has a unique part of that you can do it unseen and still have it be. I mean, there's a potential that you could go do something and have it be as great as any sports achievement for the athlete that does it, and have no one, even except maybe you and a couple buddies, and no
Yeah.
one sees it. And
Yeah.
yet you have the feeling that you won the World Cup, you won Wimbledon, you won the NBA, NFL, World Series. And
Yeah.
so that's pretty kind of amazing for me, because I feel like then you have a little bit more control over your fulfillment. You have a little bit of more control over getting it, and get, and not, you don't have to wait till the thing happens. You don't have to beat the guy that, you don't have all these other variables that make it doesn't make it less elusive. It's equally elusive, is not more, because you're talking about the ocean, you're talking about waves, you're talking about stuff that's just not around. Like, so you're like, when is it going to happen? Am I going to be ready? Am I going to be there? Can I get there? Like, so you have
Yeah.
another set of circumstances that it leads to the achievement being that, that's where the fulfillment comes, right? Like, the fulfillment comes when you win something in sports, from all of the work that you did, all the belief you had, all the injuries you suffered. I mean, all those things that you went through. That's why it's so great. If you just went out and won it, and you had not done none of that, it would mean nothing. Why do guys get all emotional? And,
Yeah.
it's because you've dedicated your life to this stuff.
Yeah. Well, 20,000 people aren't going to go out and watch you in the middle of the ocean
Yeah,
like they.
no.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, it's, golly, you could call it, artist integrity, or
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
you start
Yeah.
off one way, and then,
Yeah.
popularity becomes, and then it influences your performance and why you're performing. And I mean, that's a fascinating concept. I mean, I think it's applicable to pretty much all of us.
It is.
I mean, I'm sure you got to a point where, or there was a period where it was fun when all you had all this attention and people
Yeah.
talking, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, this is not why I'm doing it.
Yeah. And then it's not, and it's also, it does change. It changes the environment. I can tell you, I know from the early days when we first started riding really giant waves with no one around. And then all of a sudden, when people started seeing it, and then we started getting other competitors, and all of a sudden that environment changed from camaraderie to competitive, and we started going against each other, and that was a distraction from the pure act of trying to just survive the situation. You were
Uh,
just, the waves were ultimately not the opponent, because you're not going to be an opponent of a wave, because that you're never going to do well in that competition. But
right.
you can be in harmony with it, right? You can have harmonious act with it. It'd be like if, a giant rhino is running by, and you're able to know how to run and get on its back and ride it, and it lets you ride it, and you get to ride it, and you're riding with it, and it lets you ride it, and then you hop off and you're cool. And sometimes it turns around and spikes you, and sometimes you fall off when you're trying to jump on it. And so I think it's just a different approach too. I think that there's something I like personally about that approach. I think the competitive, that's probably why I went personally the direction I went, because I feel like that brought out a side of me that I didn't like uh, that much, because it made me aggressive, and I'm naturally aggressive. So I was just trying to learn how to deal with my aggression. So I wasn't productive for me to be combative with other guys, even though I probably am good at it, because it's part of it's you have to be when you're in certain environments. But just because you're good at it doesn't mean you like it. Doesn't make
Right.
it might not make you feel good. I mean, you know, you can be good at something and,
You
and
can be good
not
at
feel
robbing
great about it.
banks.
Yeah.
Right. Um, well, so I mean, from what I know about you, you've always done things, I feel like, on your own. You learn things through doing them, through experience. Um, I'd love to go over kind of to the nutrition side of things, and all, and I mean, we all know kind of your company and all that, but and I know you get asked this question a lot, but I got to ask it. These things you figured out on your own, right? I mean, these are things that you've been concocting and creating based on your body and brain's reaction to them. I mean, was
Yeah.
somebody teaching you some of this, or I mean, have you, like, how did all this kind of come together?
I mean, I have a saying about, because we talk about creativity and ideas in general, like when you come up with an idea. And I have a saying, there's nothing new. It's just a new application of an old idea. And
Sure.
so, a lot of it is observing. You hear, oh, there's this new thing over here. Oh, really? Let me see that. Oh, let's try that. How does it? Oh, yeah, that's good. Or that's not good. Oh, look about this one. Oh, okay. And then you come up with these hybrids, right? You come up with these combinations of things because I mean, I think, first of all, it's really hard to come up with your own idea. Usually it's somebody else's idea, and then people try to have ownership of it. I'm not capable of doing that. I can't go and take somebody's idea and say, "Oh, this is my idea." I mean, we
Yeah.
can use my oh yeah, we can use uh my creamers as an example. If you want to talk about the original recipe, was like, okay, my friend Paul Check was like, hey, espresso with ghee. I love coffee on my own. I call that my French habit. I had two habits when I worked in France for 20 years for a company there, and
You did?
Windsor. I worked,
You were,
yeah, for my first sponsor was a French sponsor for 22 years. It was a company called Oxbow, and they sponsored me to do what I'd just be me. They just go, you just be you, and we'll sponsor you. So it was like windsurf, snowboard, kite surf, foil, tow. They would use me for in everything. It wasn't like, okay, you got to surf, and we're a surf brand, and they had a real open view of things. And so, and actually the first place I got really respect as an athlete was in France. So anyway, so I had my two French habits, which I call red wine. And since I've been sober for 17 years, that habit ended, but I love coffee. Right. So
mhm.
I love coffee, and as an energy source, because I'm not going to drink some can full of crap, and that I just can't. You're not going to get me doing. I have my energy drink, and it's
Yeah.
coffee. So then I'm, become a connoisseur of coffee. I'm getting beans from all over the world. I'm trying them. My one buddy goes, "Oh, you should try to put some ghee in your coffee," because I was putting whole cream and he's like, "Oh, try the ghee," and I'm like, "Oh, the ghee was amazing." The and then somebody else goes, "Oh, there's a guy making coffee with butter," and I'm like, "Okay, butter. Okay, let's try butter, ghee, butter. Oh, coconut oil. Okay, let's try coconut oil. Okay, let's." And so and then just through experimenting, I made my kind of my recipe, like the stuff that what I liked. I like the flavor of it. I like the way it was reacting energetically and mental focus. I was like, okay, this is enhancement. Like I'm getting better sustained energy. I'm getting mental focus. I can go out and surf for 6 hours straight and never need to eat. Never, don't even need anything. I can just go and go and go. Perfect. This is my formula for performance. And then that recipe I started sharing with my friends. They come over. That's pretty typical of what we do in Hawaii. I call it the aloha spirit, which is we're super generous with our stuff. Like we fish, we catch a lot, we give it to the neighbors, we give it to everybody. We hunt, catch a lot, you give it away. You farm, you harvest a lot, you share. So we share a lot. I think I've always been like that, and I always feel like if you're an athlete or you need a secret to outperform someone, I'm like then you're weak. Then you're weak because I would say, hey, you can have my stuff, my board, my thing, and do it. Show me what you got. And
Yeah.
if you can do it better than I can do it, then I'll be like, man, I got to figure out what you're doing so I can do it like that or what,
Yeah.
So I feel that way about a lot of that stuff. I feel that way about nutrition. I feel the way about fitness. I think you have an obligation that you're obligated to share things that you're benefiting from with other people so they can benefit.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up. That my mom was, my mom was a very generous person, and that's just the way we roll. So I shared my recipe with other people. They were like, they come back and be like, what is in this stuff? Like, what is this? I need to make this. I gotta. And so I would tell them, okay, this brand, coconut, that thing, this turmeric, that, whatever the one they tried that they liked was. And then one of my buddies goes, hey, I gotta, let's make something, like, because he wanted the stuff. So he's like, oh, I'll make a powdered version of your recipe. And then I think like the third or fourth one was the instant lot, what we call the original creamer, like, which is the first
Yeah.
creamer. It's the one that we sell at Costco now in like 2-pound bags. That's the first recipe. So that one comes out. We sell it online to people. Hey, try it. And then it just got traction and went from there. But it speaks really to, I heard it wasn't like I just was in a vacuum and I was just concocting and
Yeah.
I had no influence. There's no one doing that in any genre. There's
Yeah.
not, I
Yeah.
don't care if you're SpaceX or Apple or whoever, no one's doing that. That's not how we roll.
Right.
And so,
It's
and if you're
team
acting like
and
you're doing that,
yeah.
I don't know, bad boy. You either stole somebody else's idea, or so, but
Yeah.
that's just kind of, and I think I approach that. I use that philosophy, I think, with everything that I'm involved in. If I go do something that's unbelievable, I just call my friend and go, "Hey, I just did this thing. It's amazing. You got to come try it." It's like, and I'll be the first to. Now, that being said, don't cast pearl before swine. So, like, I'm not exactly quick to just be like, "Hey, sure, anybody else?" Like, if there's people that don't necessarily have similar values as me, I'm not going to just run over and be like, "Hey, let me help you out and fix your board and tell you to help you this and help you do the thing." I just kind of there's just, you don't have enough time for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they
Yeah.
ask you, I will. I used to have a couple. People would always ask me about my boards. They go, "Oh, how long's that board?" And people are nosy, and sometimes you're like, they're just asking. So I would come up with lengths. Like, one of them was 10 feet 2 inches. And they'd be like, "How long is that board?" I go, 10 to your own business. Like, or how long's that board? It'd be 11. Like, the board's 11 feet 11 inches. They go, "How long is that board?" I go, 11. But it was 11. So it was actually 12 feet. But so,
Right.
like, don't kid yourself. I will do stuff like that. But it's like, hey, if you're nosy and you're trying to, I'll be like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we say, dumb questions deserve dumb answer. Nosy questions deserve some sort of little,
Smart ass.
that's right.
I love it. I was just watching some musician and somebody yelled out free bird and he was like, free bird.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Um, man, I love that. What stood out was not necessarily getting better than, but getting better.
Getting
Right. I
better.
mean, I love that. It's just
Yeah.
such a,
Yeah.
and that's got to be a the aloha spirit, the whole Hawaiian mentality. I mean, it's got to
Yeah.
be. I mean,
Polynesian. Yeah, because
yeah,
they had to in Polynesia, you had to work together. You're in the middle of the ocean. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
gotta have a little like camaraderie going. You gotta have a little
Right.
bit of, the one guy might catch a bunch of fish one day and you better hope he gives you some. And then when you catch a bunch, you better make sure you give it. So when he catches, he gives it back to you. It's like,
Yeah.
you
Don't be
know,
a dick.
yeah, you might be hungry.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move a little bit into God, there's so many things I could talk to you about, but I'll preserve some time here. Parenting.
Mm.
So when I was in Malibu, I sat down with you for 10 minutes and we talked. So I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I know you got daughters. And having a child, I mean, I always say this, if I didn't have a kid, I'd be 10 years behind on maturity, self-awareness, all the things that have occurred as a result of having a child and a wife and a mother of a child. Uh, and I've heard you speak on some of this stuff before, but I'd love to just talk about it because it's so current for me. I mean, I'm maybe a decade behind you, but I've got a fucking high school girl. It's insane.
Well, I'll be careful of what I say about that, but
Yeah.
I will say teenage girls are they're mental patients. So
Yeah. Nice being careful.
as long as you know that,
Sure.
you're okay. Because then when they're having a moment, you'll just be like, oh yeah, okay. Like if you had somebody that was really really like an actual mental patient, and you were with them and they had these behaviors, you wouldn't be offended. You would just
Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, no problem. Like he's having
Yeah.
a moment.
That's
Okay,
just
cool.
you.
But
Yeah.
with your daughter, you're trying to reason and understand. Bad idea. I mean, at this stage, now I have one of my daughters just turned 21, and she, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. Today's her birthday.
Oh, nice.
So, when I think about parenting, I told somebody I have a parable of parenting, and I say, parenting is like building a samurai sword. I go, to build a samurai sword, you take steel, you heat it up until it's red hot. You beat it with a hammer, and then you stick it in a bucket of ice. And then you do that over and over and over and over. And eventually it's the strongest steel in the world. And I think your children take you, they heat you up, they beat you with a hammer, and they stick you in a bucket of ice. And eventually you become tempered. And it's like I call it the tempering of your soul. And it's for you, not them. See,
Hmm.
we mistake that we're doing it for them. No, it's not called. I said if it was for them, we'd call it kidding. It's not called kidding. It's called parenting. It's for
Right.
you. It's
It's
for
for you.
your. It's for your growth. They don't.
That's right.
You just feed them and love them. They're gonna be
They're
good.
gonna they're
Like you
gonna
don't
do
need
what they
me.
do, like we did what we did.
That's right. That's right. So, but it's been, I call it my greatest challenge, and definitely I mean, that's been the thing that shaped me the most of anything that I've experienced. And I have three, amazing daughters at different stages of life, and and Gabby and my relationship and our team work that helps raise these girls. And just, that's been, I mean, listen, it's your greatest challenge, but it'll be your greatest achievement.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully.
Exactly. That's
I
part of
mean,
it too. That's part of
right.
it too. That's
Yeah.
part of it
I
too.
mean, I
If you're participating.
if you want to participate,
That's
exactly. I
right.
mean,
If you don't care and you don't participate, that has a price.
yeah.
And I don't ever want to pay that.
I don't either.
That's back to what we were talking about. Choose your sacrifice or it'll be chosen for you. So
Yeah.
choose it. I mean, these are all, what's in is what's out. It's all connected. I believe that life is a formulaic process. I think there's a formula for every aspect. There's a formula for failure. There's a formula for success. And then it's just which genre, which background, which situation, but it's really it's all tied. It's not, it's not that complicated in the sense of that the formula itself is it's got to be very simple because it just seems to be true everywhere you look. I mean, we've made everything complicated, but the actual formula to have success is, and what that means for you, like
Sure.
what's your idea of success. But there's just there's certain it's math,
Well, and I completely agree. But the fascinating part is understanding that formula and beginning to be aware of it comes with so much of a journey. And that journey has to involve I mean, ability to change, willingness to change. I mean, all those things. Like, I mean, I look at like my dad. I mean,
change.
exactly. And I look at my dad, and he was a tough alcoholic, died of it. I'm sober as well. Um, and I like, one of my biggest goals is to break the cycle, is to not treat my damn daughter like he treated me, even though he did
Yeah.
his best. I got to do better.
Well, Sean Ryan says, the most difficult thing to do is break generational bonds.
Yeah.
And alcoholism is one of the most powerful generational bonds there is. And so that's, you know, that's why very few people can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
That's
well.
right.
But what you said, key thing was the willingness to change, and I think curiosity is connected to the willingness to change. Because if you're curious, then you'll find something out that might force change.
Yeah.
So if you're not
Yeah.
curious, then you don't need to find anything out, then you don't need to change. So I think
Right.
curiosity is the foundation. But yeah, the willingness to change, you see so many people that just aren't willing to change. And that, I it's funny because I talk about, we can always create a narrative, a story that allows us to not have to do anything different.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're
Easy.
so good at that.
It's
We're so
so easy.
beautiful at that. We can just be like, hey, I really don't want to do anything different. So we make a nice little story that just allows us to continue on whatever road we're on that we either feel safe on, that we feel safe because we know it and we're scared of the unknown, or whatever the 10 other stories we tell ourselves why we don't change. So
Right. Have you ever heard of the book The Comfort Crisis?
I have.
It's a
Yeah.
good one.
Oh yeah, it's real.
Yeah, very real.
Yeah. Get in your ice tub, and that might help you with your comfort.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's funny. My dad used to say, you don't know shit till you're 40. He used to tell me that when I was like 12. I
Hey,
was like,
but
what?
your dad's not far off. They say that the
Oh, he was
mind,
dead
like the
on.
male mind, doesn't even connect until we're like 28 or 29.
Oh, yeah.
So,
He was
well,
dead
there's
on.
another
But you don't say it to
your
your
dad's
12 year
quote
old.
brings it. What's that?
You don't say it to your 12-year-old.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe you do. You never know.
Maybe.
I mean, the interesting thing. Yeah, but I always ask, well, was he sober when he said it?
Hell no.
So then he's off the hook. Then he's
Right.
off the
Oh,
hook.
yeah. Yeah.
I do love that Mark Twain quote. It was amazing what my dad learned from when I was 16 till when I got to be 22. It's like it's like your dad's dumb when you're 16, but when you're 22, you're like, wow, it was amazing. My dad was pretty smart. Like,
Yeah.
so that does happen too. Sometimes we look back and we think, well, maybe they were a little smarter than we gave them credit for. In some ways, because no matter what, there is certain wisdom that does come with time, even by default.
Yeah. I wasn't very easy either.
There's always
So
that.
I
Yeah,
deserved a lot of it.
I can
Uh,
relate.
but at the same thing, I mean, I look at my daughter and I'm like, I can't imagine saying some of the things he said to me to her. I would just
Well,
never do it.
or do. I can
Break
just
her
think about
spirit.
the stuff that I was subjected to, and I go, oh, no, I'm never going to subject that. But that's also part of what's made us be the fathers we are. So that's part of, you can almost go, thank you for doing that, because in a way, then you can use that as the benchmark to move from. Like you go,
Yeah.
okay, cool, yeah, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to, and so I mean, sometimes the example of how not to be is just more powerful than the example of how to be. It's
Yeah.
like, the example of how to be, you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. The example of how not to be is like, I'm never going to do that. Or
Right.
that's something I'm going to try to avoid at all costs.
And you know what he would say if I said that to him, that I'm now better because of that? He'd say, "You're welcome."
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm doing this for you,
I
boy.
did that for
This is
you.
all for you.
That's right.
You're getting your butts whooped. And he's like, this is for you. I'm like,
It's all.
this ain't for me.
It's not for you.
Yeah.
You're letting something out here. I don't know. All right,
Yeah.
Laird. Thank you, man. I
Okay.
really appreciate you coming on here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, this has been
And all I
fun.
will say is aloha and keep it up with the girls. You're going to get through the rocky times and they're going to be smooth sailing. Well, it's just
Smooth
another set.
sailing.
Everybody talks about oh yeah, well, the terrible twos and the threes and the seven, the thing. And I'm like, I go, it doesn't get better. It just gets different.
Yeah.
But I will say that seeing your daughters become women and then being that when they become a woman, it's a remarkable thing. It's remarkable when
Yeah.
they can become a woman. But that process is a little rough,
A little rough. A
little
little rough.
rough, little rough.
So I'm coming to Kauai in February.
Okay.
Signed
Well, it's a
up.
beautiful,
I'll
yeah,
be
it's a
there.
beautiful thing. What a good place.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be
We're gonna have fun.
XPTing with you. I'm bringing another guy with me who was in Costa Rica actually.
Okay.
So yeah, me and a couple North Carolina boys will see you in Kauai.
Here we go. Stay above water.
That's where the air is.
Stay above water. It's where the air is. Exactly.
All
Okay.
right, brother. Thank you,
Thank
man.
you.
All
Take
right.
care.
See ya.
Ciao. Bye.